Welcome to A Voice of Reason in Turbulent Times with Pastor Charles Burnett-Morrow. A powerful, practical, prophetic, and progressive commentary about what is happening in our world today.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is Monday afternoon at 5 o'clock. I have a feeling the 5 o'clock hour may wind up being my time of choice to daily do our podcast. It just seems to kind of work better, I think, than my trying to do 4 o'clock. We'll see how things go. We have a number of things to talk about today. Now, I just want to say real quickly before we get started this afternoon, I want people to understand that this podcast is not meant to be overtly religious in nature. It is certainly because I'm a spiritual person and I'm a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ, and therefore the Word of God and the Spirit of God absolutely inform everything that I think and say and do. I fear God, meaning I give God a place in my thinking, and therefore my faith is a very important part of my life. And again, it informs every aspect of my life at some level or another. This podcast, however, is not meant to be a religious show as such, okay? What we're trying to demonstrate is that people of faith, Christians, born-again Christians, can actually think and use their mind and use reason and logic when looking at situations going on in the world, that we're all not a bunch of mindless, brainless zombies who follow after the leading of the most popular preachers of the day, whoever happens to be on television and have the greatest audience. All of us are not like that. And many of us are able to have good, intelligent conversations with people without having to preach at them and be preachy and, And so basically this podcast is meant to rather demonstrate that, okay? It's meant to demonstrate that even as a Christian, we can talk about current events, we can talk about things without it sounding like a revival meeting, okay? There are so many people in the world. One of the things that frustrates many people is that when they try to have a conversation with a family member or a friend who is a Christian, they always wind up with these people preaching at them. Everything is, well, the Bible says this, the Bible says that. While I certainly do that on occasion, for the most part, what we're trying to do is simply approach things intellectually, honestly, reasonably, using common sense and the ability to employ reason and logic, okay, as it relates to current events and things that are happening in our world and in our nation today. I do and have had for the whole of my ministry. I have always had a prophetic ministry, and therefore, as I approach issues of the day and things that are happening, I'm always approaching them as well from a prophetic vantage point and a prophetic viewpoint. And what I mean by that is, oftentimes if the Lord has shown me something, then I will describe to you what I believe is coming and what is about to happen. Oftentimes I'll explain things from the perspective of, folks, this is what's really going on right now, because people are not seeing it. They're not understanding. And the Lord may have communicated to me in some fashion or another concerning these certain things. And so, yes, I come at things as well from a prophetic, practical position and place, okay? So having said that, I want atheists and people of other faiths and what have you, I want them to understand that they can be comfortable listening into this podcast. I believe they can learn a lot. They can understand a lot. They can see things from a fresh and unique position. Oftentimes, what I am saying, frankly, is not anything you're hearing from other podcasts. I appreciate what the Midas Network does, for instance. I appreciate what Steve Schmidt does. I love what the Lincoln Project does, and there are any number of different podcasters out there. I appreciate what they do, as well as certain news agencies and news organizations. However, approaching things from a prophetic vantage point, I have to tell you that these people are not by any means giving us the whole story. And it kind of frustrates me sometimes because, at least in my mind's eye, a lot of what I have to say, to me, is blatantly obvious. People ought to be able to see it. Shouldn't be hard to see, shouldn't be hard to understand, and therefore it should not be difficult to call it out. But I don't see that happening in the secular media. I do not see it happening in so many of the podcasts, even those that I enjoy, that I like, that I support. So I share what I have to share, again, from a different perspective, and I think it could be beneficial to you. On that note, what we are going through today, folks, is an all-out coup. We are going through the process of our government being dismantled from within the inside. Adolf Hitler dismantled the German democracy in the 1930s, and he did so after a failed coup attempt, which put him in prison for a couple of years, during which time he wrote the book Mein Kampf, or My Struggle. And when he come out of jail, he realized that a military or violent coup was not going to achieve the ends he desired to achieve. And therefore, he decided it might be wise to approach things from a new and different perspective. That new perspective was this. He decided that he needed to follow the rules, he needed to follow the law, he needed to work within the framework of the Constitution of Germany, but if he could position himself, if he could get in the right position so that he had the ability, working through the law, working through the rules, working in conjunction with the German Constitution, if he could get into the right position, once there, he would be able to begin to dismantle the current German government and recreate it in the image of government that he had, which of course ultimately resulted in a dictatorship, an authoritarian regime. I have been prophesying for decades that there was a plan within the Republican Party to do this same thing. And I've been preaching this for decades, folks. This isn't something I began to say when Donald Trump announced his candidacy back in 2015. No. I've been saying this long before Trump ever came on the scene. As a matter of fact, I had said the only thing, the one piece of the puzzle that those within the Republican Party who had this scheme and this plan worked out, the only thing within the Republican Party that they lacked was an amoral, vicious, mean-spirited individual without conscience, without empathy, who would be able to help them solidify their plan. When Donald Trump announced his candidacy for the Republican nomination for president, I'll be honest with you, I lived in New York for about 10 years, and for years, I had heard things concerning Trump. He's a clown, he's a fake, he's a fraud, he's a con man, he's been far less successful in business, far less successful than he has been successful. And he's failed at way more ventures than he has been successful in. And I had heard these things, and I understood these things. But when he announced he was going to run for the Republican nomination, my first response was, okay, let's see what he has to say. Let's hear what he's going to put forth, So I really, in other words, I was not so-called a never-Trumper from the minute I heard that he was going to announce his run. However, when I saw him announce his run after coming down the escalator and all the showmanship and, the tomfoolery that we saw that day, when I heard him announce his run and I heard his speech, immediately I turned to my partner of almost 24 years and I said, uh-oh, here's their man. This is the guy that these Republicans have been waiting for. This is exactly who they need. I saw in the way that he was speaking, the things that he was saying. I told Tommy, I said, my God, this man is campaigning using Adolf Hitler's playbook. I saw so many parallels, and being a student of history and always having had a strong interest in World War II, I had seen so many things and read so many things relative to World War II. And the minute I heard Donald Trump, demonizing immigrants and all this sort of thing, and and the negativity and the angst and the anger and the vitriol in his voice, I said, dear God, I feel the spirit of Hitler in this. He literally sounds and acts and speaks just like Adolf Hitler did. On this podcast, I have presented in the past a number of quotes related to Adolf Hitler, quotes that have been delegated to the pages of history. These are actual things that at some point or another he said or he wrote, and we have them on paper, folks, for all of posterity. I went down a list of a number of his quotes, and you could easily see, at least in my estimation, how that Donald Trump appeared to embrace every one of these quotes, meaning his actions lined up with what Hitler had said. Hitler talked about the use of propaganda. He talked about the need for anyone seeking power to speak at the lowest possible intellectual level that they could in order to appeal to the masses. It said, this way the least intelligent among you understands what you're saying, and of course the more intelligent will understand, simply because you could have said it a whole lot smarter and they'd have gotten it. But if you said it a whole lot smarter, only the more educated, only the more intelligent would get what you're saying. So Hitler said, no, you got to talk at the lowest possible level so you can appeal to the greatest number of people. We saw Donald Trump running. We heard pathologists and we heard speech therapists and experts relative to speech saying that Donald Trump speaks at a fourth grade level. This man was obviously approaching things from a very low level so that he might appeal to the greatest number of people among the masses. Hitler talked about any number of things. I'm not going to go through all that again today, but I saw in Trump from day one Adolf Hitler, and I told Tommy at one point, I said, Adolf Hitler lives. He has been reborn. This man is the reincarnation, as it were, of Adolf Hitler. I could see that. I knew, having been prophesying for decades, that the Republican Party had within it a plan to overthrow our government, to do away with our Constitution, to institute a new form of government that would be a hybrid theocracy and oligarchy, but they wanted an authoritarian figurehead at the top of the heap. I had been prophesying this for ages. I had been talking about the fact that there were factions within our country, racist, white supremacist groups within our country. And folks, I was saying all of this, and I was saying it exactly the way I'm wording it right now. And I said there are factions within our nation that are white supremacists, that are racist, deeply racist, and they desire a second civil war. So as a matter of fact, for decades, they have been preparing for a second civil war. They have war games. They go out. They create these places where they can go and they can shoot guns, and they're literally preparing for an all-out second civil war. And I tried to explain that the GOP, working in conjunction with these racists and these white supremacists, because this group within the GOP holds many of those same positions, racist, misogynist positions. And I said the GOP is going to welcome that violence. They're going to welcome a second civil war, because when such violence occurs, it will give their man the opportunity to suspend habeas corpus and to institute martial law. And once that has been done, basically they have flipped the switch and they have turned off the Constitution, and they have no plan at that point of ever going back. They don't, unlike Abraham Lincoln, who during the first Civil War had to suspend habeas corpus because obviously you cannot embrace and follow the Bill of Rights and at the same time fight a military battle. You just can't do it, you could never in the universe fight a war on foreign soil and follow the rules of the Bill of Rights, where you have to get you have to get a warrant before you're able to search, and all these sort of things. You just can't do it. A war is a different ball of wax than simply day-to-day life within a society. And because half the nation to the south was warring against half the nation to the north, and there was a clear line of delineation between the north and the south, Abraham Lincoln had to, for a time, suspend habeas corpus. However, he had no evil intentions. He had no lack of goodwill in his heart, because when everything was done and finished, immediately he brought us right back to the Constitution and said, okay, folks, now let's get back to doing things as we have always done them. That is not the plan. I can tell you right now, that is not the plan of the GOP. There is another aspect of things that are happening in our world today and in our nation today that really frustrates me something awful. And that is the fact, excuse me, first of all, that so many in the media, so many in podcast land, do not want to come out and say what is obvious. We are in the midst of a full-blown coup. Donald Trump and his Project 2025 minions have demonstrated in a month's time, they have clearly demonstrated that they are marching all over the Constitution. They are ignoring laws. They are doing the most violent, drastic things without any concern whatsoever. No concern whatsoever. How it affects the masses, how it affects the majority of the American people. Frankly, they just don't care. It has frustrated me that the media and podcasters are not being honest with the public and telling them, listen, folks, it is abundantly obvious that they are trying to undo our constitutional republic, and they obviously are working toward a complete remake of our government and a redesign, and they obviously are working toward an authoritarian head. But we also see the theocratic and the oligarchy aspects as well. So this government that they hope to pull together is a hybrid of these three things. An authoritarian head, and beneath the authoritarian head are two very powerful, very influential branches, which are the oligarchs, the most wealthy among us, and the theocrats, which is the most influential religious figures among us. That is the form of government that they want to bring to America. There are any number of other things that they want to bring to us, which are highly dangerous and troublesome. There's a whole bunch of stuff that they're wanting to do. Right now, folks, I'm going to tell you, let me share a video with you to get us started this afternoon. The first video that I would like to share with you today is a meeting that Donald Trump conducted at the White House for the governors of the 50 states. Many, if not most, of the U.S. governors were in attendance. Trump was going off on a jag about transgendered athletes and how, this is just such a...
And it's crazy, but The NCAA has complied immediately, by the way. That's good. But I understand Maine. Is Maine here, the governor of Maine? Well, are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with state and federal laws.
We are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way,
sorry about that. They love to paint the picture of the transgendered issue as simply being a matter of a man in a dress, or a man dressed as a woman. I can tell you, knowing hundreds of transgendered people over the last 30 or so years, I can tell you that the transgendered issue, number one, is real. Number two, it is legitimate. There are people who are born with one set of organs related to gender, and yet their internal wiring, if I might word it that way, does not match by any means their external gender identification. There are people born every day that we used to call them hermaphrodites. Now they call them intersexed. There are people born every day who are literally born with the elements of both sexes as part of their physical makeup. When these children are born, the parents literally are made to make a choice. Which gender, do you want this child to be raised as? Because they literally possess elements from both genders. They may externally possess what appears to be, a male organ, and yet internally they literally have ovaries and they literally have the makings for baby making. Okay, this is a legitimate human condition, and it happens far more frequently than people realize. It literally is like one birth in, I believe the number was like 5,000. That is not, folks, that is not something then that is extremely rare. We're not talking about 1 in a million or 1 in 50,000 or 100,000. Literally, it occurs like in 1 out of 5,000 births. So there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and even thousands of intersexed people born into our world every single day. If an individual can be born having elements of both sexes, first of all, that puts to rest the idiotic notion on the right, the religious right, that everything is black and white, everything is perfectly clear, God made man and woman, and that's all there is to it, and blah, 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 blah. Okay? No, it's not quite as simple as all that. The world in which we live is much more complicated than that. And it is wonderful that there are so many people in our society who want to look at everything as though, there's an easy answer for that. There's an easy answer for that. Well, listen, a lot of people who are transgendered, while they may have one set of sexual organs externally, internally, I assure you, they are wired exactly the opposite to their physical external gender identification. If you're somebody who has all these opinions and bless God, I know how it's supposed to be. There's men and there's women and that's all there is to it, If you're one of these foolish people who run around with these notions that everything is just so simple in our world, then you probably have never known a person who is transgendered or transsexual. I have known hundreds. I lived in New York City for a decade. I've been in LGBT affirming ministry for more than 30 years now. I have pastored any number of people who were transgendered. Many years ago, I've had God only knows how many friends. I've just had a lot of exposure to transgendered people. And I'm going to tell you, I know male to female transgendered people who, while they may not be physically capable of having a cycle, if you understand what I'm saying, a menstrual cycle, they literally display all the evidence of going through that cycle on a regular, exactly as a woman would go through it. You can think I'm crazy. You can disagree all you want to. Sweetheart, I've seen it with my own eyes. The issue of transgenderism is not by any means merely a matter of how an individual dresses. That is such an oversimplification of the issue. Okay? It is a ridiculous oversimplification of the issue. No, these folks genuinely, sincerely have a psychological makeup, an emotional makeup that does not match their physical makeup. Okay? I'm not certain exactly what I can say about how I feel relative to transgendered people in sports. Honestly, I don't know exactly what I can say about that, because if a person, simply by reason of the fact that they were born into the wrong physical makeup, if they in fact had an advantage physically because of that, it would seem as though it might be unfair for them to compete in a sport with other women or men who do not have that physical advantage by reason of their birth gender. Okay? But I'll leave that issue. Excuse me one moment. Ginger, shut up. One of the curses of doing these things from your home. And my dogs never bark. So, of course, today she's going to bark. And I tell you honestly, my dogs never bark. I don't know what they're barking at, because they never do that. But anyway, I leave the issue of transgendered people competing in various sports. I leave that to those who are involved with the issue. You know, as I say so many times, one of the biggest problems the religious right has, as well as many on the conservative side of the political spectrum, they don't know how to mind their own stinking business. They don't know how to stay in their lane. And if an issue does not affect me, then I should have no say in that issue. Okay? It's that simple. And so many times there are issues that I am not directly affected by that issue, and I don't have the problem that the religious right has, so that I'm not able to respect boundaries and simply step back and say, well, that issue does not directly affect me. Therefore, let me leave that matter to those who are directly affected. Let them work it out. You know what I'm saying? And so this is how I approach things. I believe that is a Christian perspective. That is how God would have us live our lives. If you're not a woman, listen carefully. facing the decision concerning abortion, then you have no say. Your opinion amounts to a pile of cow manure, okay? It doesn't mean anything to anybody. Unless that is an issue that directly affects you, then you should keep your opinion to yourself. And it is asinine for anyone to think that they have a right, based on their belief system or their religious convictions, to legislate and force others to have to live by the standard that they believe God has called them to live by. I don't expect the unbelieving world. I don't expect people who do not know God as I know God. I do not expect them to live by the same standard or the same set of rules that I live by. I am not interested in forcing my viewpoints or my religious convictions upon anybody. I do not see in the Word of God where that is ever taught. I've never seen where God tells us that we ought to somehow legislate what we view as righteousness. Folks, that is insane. That is utterly insane. Yet we have a whole segment in our society today. I'll tell you, I'm going to get religious for a minute now, okay? I'm going to tell you who they are. In the book of Revelation, the Word of God talks about the great whore. And we're going to be looking at this in our Wednesday night Bible studies. Probably in a few months, we're going to get to this particular chapter and, Revelation 17 and 18 chapters, 17 and 18, as well as the first 4 verses of chapter 19. That section deals with the great whore of Babylon, which is in effect the Babylonian Empire resurrected and reborn, but in a new location. With a new identity as such. And I believe with all my heart, we'll be looking at it with much greater detail. I believe, as did every single Protestant reformer in history, going back through Luther and Tyndale and Wycliffe, all the great Protestant reformers, they all believed that this great whore was descriptive of the Roman Catholic organization. I believe that to be true. But what's interesting is it is said that this woman has daughters. And interestingly enough, there are many Protestant organizations which originally, of course, the Protestant movement was came out of the Roman Catholic organization. And there are any number of Protestant organizations today which think and act just like mommy. Okay? Many of their doctrines are doctrines that did not originate with the apostles of Jesus Christ, who alone had the authority to establish doctrine, but many of their doctrines simply date back to various Roman councils and various the Roman Church decisions, and so a lot of their belief systems literally originated in the Roman Catholic Church. And even though they came out and created a separate Protestant organization, they still look a lot like mommy. They still look a lot like their mother. And their mother is said to be a pseudo-Christian organization that has long been involved with politics. Well, of course, we know the Roman Catholic Church claims not only to be a religious organization, but it simultaneously claims to be an independent state. So the Vatican is literally considered the capital of a state, an actual country, okay? And they have their own government, they have their own police, everything that they have is representative of their own making, okay? They're not under the same rules within the Vatican as the people of Rome who live around them are, because it is considered to be a sovereign state. So the Roman Catholic Church for centuries has gone to bed with kings and princes and prime ministers and presidents. They have been engaged in politics. They've weighed in on politics for centuries. Now what we're beginning to see is the unmasking of many Protestant organizations who are wanting to replicate the conduct of their mother. That's what you're seeing today, folks. The Southern Baptist Convention has, on virtually every issue of great importance within our nation, they have been on the wrong side of history over and over and over again. They were on the wrong side of history as it related to slavery. They were on the wrong side of history as it related to blacks having the vote. They were on the wrong side of history as it related to women having the vote. They were on the wrong side of history as it related to the civil rights movement, okay? So the Southern Baptist Convention, I believe, is one of Rome's eldest daughters. Looks an awful lot like Mama. They will stand there and they will decry Rome, man. They will claim they have nothing to do with Rome. They want nothing to do with Rome. Yet so many of their own beliefs come straight out of the Roman Catholic Church, come right out of Catholicism. And many of their practices, especially as it relates to mixing and mingling with politicians and seeking to exercise political influence, these things also, once again, are emblemic of their relationship to their mommy, to Rome. So, having said that, I say again, they don't know how to respect boundaries. They do not know how. They have no interest in delineation. You know, they have no interest in drawing the line between the believer and the unbeliever and saying, well, if God expects this of us as Christians, then this is what we as Christians ought to be doing, or this is what we as Christians ought not to be doing. But nowhere in New Testament teaching is the Christian church ever admonished or taught to seek to exercise political influence and power. Certain groups, evangelical and fundamentalist groups in our country, if I may say so, as a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ, they are historically infamous for twisting and perverting Scripture in order to make it say what they want it to say. They are infamous for picking and choosing which Scriptures they want to claim have any influence over us today and which Scriptures have absolutely no influence over us today. And, the Southern Baptist Convention in particular, as well as many other evangelical and fundamentalist groups, honey, if you could see the Bibles that they use to preach from a spiritual perspective, those Bibles would look like Swiss cheese. Why do I say that? Because they literally go in and they'll snip out this passage here and they'll snip out that passage there, and they'll go through in every chapter they're snipping out passages because they don't want to embrace that. They don't want to believe that. And therefore, they suggest to their followers that these things are not applicable to us today. These things have no application to us today. And so an evangelical Bible looks like Swiss cheese. It's full of holes. There are all kinds of items which have been removed, and they are removed for no reason other than these people have no interest in embracing those particular things that are spoken of. So hypocrisy is the hallmark of evangelical and fundamentalist Christianity. Now, again, I'm talking, if you're a person who's not a Christian and you're not a believer, I'm telling you honestly, that's the truth. This is why you see politicians in Washington who claim to be devout Baptists, or devout Bible believers. Hallelujah, glory to God. If it says it in that Bible, I believe it. Baloney. And yet they are so quick, so easily able to act hypocritically. Today they say one thing as it relates to the other party, and tomorrow, when the exact same situation exists for them, all of a sudden they have a completely different viewpoint. The viewpoint that the Democrats were trying to claim just 2 or 3 years ago, and you said, no, that viewpoint is not accurate, that is not right, that's not how you should see things. But then all of a sudden, when the shoe is on the other foot, and it happens to be a Republican foot, all of a sudden they're saying what the Democrats said just 2 or 3 years ago. And so hypocrisy is common to people who come from a fundamentalist or evangelical position. Hypocrisy is as easy for them as putting on their shoes, because it's part of their religious belief system as well. The Bible calls them scribes and Pharisees hypocrites. That's what the Bible calls them. But that hypocrisy does not exist only within their religious belief system, but it also exists within their political operations and the way they conduct themselves politically. But I want to share something with you. Trump had this meeting with governors from all over the United States of America. He was talking about the issue of transgendered individuals in sports. The Republican Party loves to make something absolutely huge out of a pea, something that is minute and teensy and really affects very few people at all in our society. Their followers and the mega minions love to hate the same people. They love to be angry at the same issues. They love the camaraderie of being so righteous that they just can't stand this group over here and that group over there. And somehow or another they take comfort in being part of a group that shares the same bigotry, the same malice, the same hatred, the same, negativity. And in today's political environment, I hate to say the transgender, transsexual community is one of their prime targets. It's an easy target because, once again, that community overall is not the biggest community in the world, okay? The number of transgendered people in our society are precious few. It's a very, very, very small number of people compared to the overall population. I doubt it even comes to 1%. I mean, I highly doubt it comes anywhere near 1%. And so therefore, they're an easy target. You don't have to worry about a whole bunch of people coming after you. You don't have to worry about a whole bunch of people picketing and rioting and carrying on. And no, like a bully, they look for the weakest kid in the playground. They look for the kid that has no friends, and that's the one they want to pick on, and makes them look big, that they can pick on this kid and they can be so aggressive and so nasty toward this kid. But by the same token, they know that they're safe doing so, because that kid doesn't have a huge number of friends. He doesn't have a big football player standing beside him that is his best buddy. That kid is weak and doesn't have a lot of strength. They're skinny, they're scrawny, So just like in the natural world, when animals are hunting for prey, they don't look for the strongest elk in the herd. No, they look for that one that has a hurt leg that can't move as quickly. They look for that one that's sickly and therefore cannot keep up with the rest of the herd. They look for the young who are less experienced and more vulnerable and more likely to wander off and separate themselves from the herd and make themselves more vulnerable. That's in the natural world. That is what a predator looks for: weakness, sickness, frailty. When it comes to bullying, the same exact thing is true. A bully will look for the weakest. They'll look for the one that has the least friends. All the things I've already mentioned. I'm not going to go through it all over again. So, the Republican Party right now, in full cooperation with Donald Trump. And if you think, and I want to say this, if you think Donald Trump is the problem, folks, you are very misled and very misguided. Donald Trump is a huge part of the problem. But the Republican Party long ago went rogue. Long ago. They had a few outliers who remained in the party. They had been there for any number of years, the John McCains and the Mitt Romneys and people like this. They had certain Republican figures who really weren't in on the plan that I've been speaking of. They weren't in on that whole thing. They weren't part of that whole thing. But when they saw the opportunity, those in the party who embraced this plan and supported this plan that has been in the making for decades, they began to kind of come out of the woodwork, and kind of show their faces, and so they've been able to squeeze out a lot of the good people who are remnants of the past Republican Party. Many of those people have retired and left Congress, left the Senate. They don't want to be bothered with it anymore. They don't want to be involved in government anymore. They don't like the direction their party has taken. You need to understand, again, this is something other podcasters will not tell you, but I am telling you. You need to understand, if Donald Trump dropped dead tomorrow, the Republican Party would still try to do everything they're doing now, because the Republican Party is fully, entirely, completely complicit Everything Trump is doing now, everything, they have wanted to do for decades. If they could have found a man 20 years ago, 30 years ago to do what Trump is willing to do, to be that ruthless and that heartless, that uncaring, that callous, without any empathy whatsoever, if they could have found someone like that 20, 30 years ago, they would have done what they're doing today then. Because the Republicans have been talking for decades, folks, about doing exactly what Donald Trump is doing today. But we still have podcasters, we still have news people who want to try to make out like, oh, the Republicans are being cowards. They're not standing up to him. You know, they're going along with him. No, 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 no. That is not what is happening. The Lindsey Grahams have jumped on the train, honey. They said, aha, we finally have an engineer who's willing to drive this train where we want him to drive it and to do what we want him to do. Finally. And they've all jumped on board. These people are fully complicit. This is not an issue of them being afraid of Donald Trump. That's not what's happening, folks. It's not what's happening. Every single thing he's done from the first minute he entered the White House, going back to his first term, everything he's done, they've rubber stamped. Everything he's done, they've gone along with. Everything that he's done, they've been willing to support. And you saw them standing in the Rose Garden celebrating some of the things that he did in his first term. Because, folks, this is not an issue of Donald Trump alone. No, Adolf Hitler could not have done what he did had it not been for the fact that he had created and grown a party, the Nazi Party, as part of the German government, okay? They initially had a very, very small role in the German government, but slowly and surely they were able to increase their numbers and increase their numbers and increase their numbers. I'm going to tell you, MAGA has been doing this for years. They did not identify themselves as MAGA. They did not use that acronym, you know. They did not use that in years past, but there have been that racist, white supremacist theocracy / oligarchy element within the Republican Party that has been growing and growing and growing. And they have been squeezing out the people who actually were halfway decent people, who had any kind of integrity, who had any kind of morality, who had any kind of empathy. They've been squeezing those people out so that the neo-Nazi party, as it were, within the Republican Party could grow. And they have been growing. Some of their most recent additions, of course, being people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, for instance. So they are following Hitler's playbook to the letter, absolutely to the letter. If you are a student of history, you know how World War II came about. You understand the rise of Hitler in Germany. You understand how Hitler was able to change the German government from a constitutional democracy to a dictatorship inside of 53 days, not even 2 months, a week short of 2 months. In 7 weeks, Hitler was able to change a constitutional democracy into a dictatorship. And that is what we are seeing happening now. And if you think, folks, honestly, if you think that anything less than that is happening right now, I've got news for you. You are going to be very, very, very shocked when things happen. And I'm trying to prophetically warn you about what is going on. I am trying to encourage you to open your eyes, to use logic and reasoning when looking at what Trump and the MAGA movement are doing within our government. They are destroying haphazardly, carelessly, without any thought. My God, they've gone in and fired thousands of people and lying, falsely accusing them of not performing, up to standard in order to justify their firing of people en masse. And then they're having to turn around and go back and rehire some of these people because they wind up finding out that their mass firing left them without sufficient numbers to actually run the operations that they still need to run. So they go back and rehire. Who are they rehiring? Oh, the same people they claimed in a letter weren't acting up to par. The same people they sent a letter to saying that their performance was poor and that's why they were being fired. Yet, interestingly enough, those are the same exact people they're having to go back and rehire. So they are going through our government, and what they are literally doing is they are dismantling and destroying. By doing this, they are assuring that these departments, these regulations, would take years and years to rebuild. By grinding it to dust, folks, in the end, they're going to be able to look at the American people and say, y'all just need to cooperate with us. You just need to surrender and submit to us. Because if you think that there's even any possibility of going back to what was, there isn't, because we ground everything to powder. We've annihilated everything. We have destroyed the computer systems. We have destroyed the paper trail. We have literally sold off the buildings that these departments used to operate out of. If you think that any leader could arise and simply restore what used to be, they're going to I'm telling you right now, they're going to stand there and right in front of your face and they're going to tell you. Now, couldn't happen because we made certain to destroy everything in such a manner as to make it impossible to rebuild it without it taking years and years, even decades, to rebuild. Okay? That's their plan. That's what they're doing. I said before Donald Trump entered the Oval Office the second time, I made a number of predictions. I made a number of promotions. I made a number of posts on Twitter. And one of those posts, for instance, appears here. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to read this to you, if I may. I just have to get it so that I can see it more clearly. Okay, and what I'd like to do is I'd like to read this to you, if I may. I just have to get it so that I can, there we go, okay. See it. Now, let me read this to you, if I may. Clearly. I posted, okay, and what I'd like to do is this on December 30th of last year. Mark my words, Trump is of the opinion his position
let me read this to you
is
if I may.
permanent.
I posted
He and the mega GOP
Okay. Well,
have
I
no
posted this
intention
on
of
December
December
30th
30th
of last year.
Watch. Mark
His
my
actions
words.
will signal
Trump
that
is
I am
of
telling
the
the
opinion
truth.
he will
Let me
show
read
no
this to you, if
loyalty
I may.
to his base.
I posted
and the
no
mega
longer
GOP
okay.
have
Well,
no
I posted
intention
this on
of
December
his
30th of last
a
year.
useful idiot. Mark
his
will
actions
soon
will
signal
that he has
I am
not
telling
what
what
he
he
wanted.
He will
And
show
let me read
no
this to you,
loyalty
if I may.
necessary. Base to be
posted
and the
no
mega
loyal
GOP
who
have no intention
on
of
December
December
30th
30th class.
year.
Systematic. Mark will be reduced to serving of your rich. He will show no loyalty necessary. Base
I
to be
posted
and the
no
mega
loyal
GOP
who
have no intention of December 30th class. Systematic. Mark will be reduced to serving of your rich. He will show no loyalty necessary. Base to be and the mega GOP have no intention of December 30th class. Systematic. Mark will be reduced to serving of your rich. He will show no loyalty necessary. Base to be and the mega GOP have no intention of December 30th class. Systematic. Mark will be reduced to serving of your rich.
The NCAA has complied immediately. That's good. I understand Maine. Are you not going to comply? Well, we are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better answer because you're not going to get any federal comply. And by the way, your population remains somewhat liberal, although I did very well there. Population. Are you not going to comply? Well, I'm saying you better federal laws. You better comply. You better do it because the answer is you're not going to get any federal comply. And by the way, your population remains somewhat free state. I did very well there. Good. I'll see you. Population. Are you not going to comply? Well, I'm saying you better federal laws. You better comply. You better do it because the answer is you're not going to get any federal comply. And by the way, your population remains somewhat free state. I did very well there. Good. I'll see you. Population. Are you not going to comply? Well, I'm saying you better federal laws. You better comply. You better do it because the answer is you're not going to get any federal comply. And by the way, your population remains somewhat free state. I did very well there. Good. I'll see you. Population. Are you not going to comply? Well, I'm saying you better federal laws. You better comply. You better do it because the answer is you're not going to get any federal comply. And by the way, your population remains somewhat free state. I did very well there. Good. I'll see you. Population. Are you not going to comply? Well, I'm saying you better federal laws. You better comply. You better do it because the answer is you're not going to get any federal comply. And by the way, your population remains somewhat free state. I did very well there. Good. I'll see you. Population. Are you not going to comply? Well, I'm saying you better federal laws. You better comply. You better do it because the answer is you're not going to get any federal comply. And by the way, your population remains somewhat free state. I did very well there. Good. I'll see you. Population. Are you not going to comply? Well, I'm saying you better federal laws. You better comply. You better do it because the answer is you're not going to get any federal comply. And by the way, your population remains somewhat free state. I did very well there. Good. I'll see you. Population. Are you not going to comply? Well, I'm saying you better federal laws. You better comply. You better do it because the answer is you're not going to get any federal comply. And by the way, your population remains somewhat free state. I did very well there. Good. I'll see you. Population. Are you not going to comply? Well, I'm in the federal laws. That is compliant. Because the answer is that is committed and population still remains somewhat in state. Like a little bit of calcium population. Well, I'm in the federal laws. That is compliant. Because the answer is that is committed and population still remains somewhat in state. Like a little bit of calcium population. Well, I'm in the federal laws. That is compliant. Because the answer is that is committed and population still remains somewhat in state. Like a little bit of calcium population. Well, I'm in the federal laws. That is compliant. Because the answer is that is committed and population still remains somewhat in state. Like a little bit of calcium population. Well, I'm in the federal laws. That is compliant. Because the answer is that is committed and population still remains somewhat in state. Like a little bit of calcium population. Well, I'm in the federal laws. That is compliant. Because the answer is that is committed and population still remains somewhat in state. Like a little bit of calcium population. Well, I'm in the federal laws. That is compliant. Because the answer is that is committed and population still remains somewhat in state. Like a little bit of calcium population. Well, I'm in the federal laws. That is compliant. Because the answer is that is committed and population still remains somewhat in state. Like a little bit of calcium population. Well, I'm in the federal laws. That is compliant. Because the answer is that is committed and population still remains somewhat in state. Like a little bit of calcium population. Well, I'm in the federal laws. That is compliant. Because the answer is that is committed and population still remains somewhat in state. Like a little bit of calcium population. Well, I'm in the federal laws. That is compliant. Because the answer is that is committed and population still remains somewhat in state. Like a little bit of calcium population. Well, I'm in the federal laws. That is compliant. Because the answer is that is committed and population still remains somewhat in state. Like a little bit of calcium population. Well, I'm in the federal laws. That is compliant. Because the answer is that is committed and population still remains somewhat in state. Like a little bit of calcium population. Well, I'm in the federal laws. That is compliant. Because the answer is that is committed and population still remains somewhat in state. Like a little bit of calcium population. Well, I'm in the federal laws. That is compliant. Because the answer is that is committed and population still remains somewhat in state. Like a little bit of calcium population. Well, I'm in the federal laws. That is compliant. Because the answer is that is committed and population still remains somewhat in state. Like a little bit of calcium population. Well, I'm in the federal laws. That is compliant. Because the answer is that is committed and population still remains somewhat in state. Like a little bit
Having to go through a little process, folks. on this side of the camera, so bear with me. Unfortunately, our ministry being as small as it is, and everything we do basically is a one-man show. I have a director, I don't have somebody over here on this side of the camera, so I'm doing everything, okay? So it takes me a minute. Unfortunately, I posted this on the 15th of November, everything we do basically believer is a or not show. Take the last days, somebody but evil men and seducers, I'm doing with me, shall wax worse and worse. All right, I posted this on the 15th of November, everything we do. That is believer or not, take the last days in our world, evil men and seducers, I'm doing evil shall wax worse and worse. I posted this on the 15th of November, everything we do. That is believer or not, take the last days in our world. Evil men but seducers, I'm not evil shall wax worse and worse. This I warned everything I do. That is believer or not, never take which will wax worse and Sorry about that. I hope I fixed the sound. It appears as though I may have accidentally had more than one mic on, and I hope that hasn't been the case. Tommy just passed me a note that sound has been looping multiple tracks, so I apologize for that. I didn't see it until I got his note. So I've turned off other things, and hopefully that'll correct the sound issue. There are chinks in our armor. There are weaknesses within our Constitution. As long as men and women of goodwill, as long as sincere men and women with integrity, those who are genuinely committed to our Constitution, as long as people of that nature are being elected, everything would go along quite well. But when someone is able to deceive, when they're able to put on an act and act like they're all about the Constitution, when in reality their ultimate goal is to discard the Constitution. They hate that document. That document, I'm going to tell you, from a right-wing perspective, folks, think about it for a minute. From a right-wing perspective, our Constitution is a thorn in their side. They've used for decades the argument that our country was meant to be a Christian country. Hallelujah, glory to God. Well, of course, our Constitution was not written so as to suggest that that is true. No, the Constitution doesn't say nothing about being a Christian nation. Doesn't even come close to saying it. It doesn't even use the word God in it. But this is an argument that they've used because the Constitution doesn't say blatantly, oh, this is supposed to be a Christian nation. So what do? They go to all these external sources. They quote, oh, John Adams said this at one point, and this person wrote in a letter this, and that person wrote in a letter that. I don't give a flying fig what any of those people said apart from the Constitution. By the time it was all said and done, these men affixed their signature to a document that they had agreed upon, and that document is our Constitution. So don't be trying to bring in all this external crap and suggest that somehow or another we've got to read into our Constitution things that were not written into our Constitution. Don't play that game. Don't go there. But mind you, these same evangelicals, these same fundamentalist folks, they'll pull the same crap. They'll pull the same game, even with the Word of God. They'll play the same game. They will twist it. They will pervert it. They will pretzel it in order to make it say what they want it to say. So again, this is another example. As hypocrisy is common in the evangelical fundamentalist world, religious-wise, it is equally as prevalent in government as it relates to fundamentalist and evangelical representatives and senators and presidents. Well, the same thing is true of their ability to twist and pervert and try to make something say what they want it to say. That same talent that runs rampant in the religious community among the fundamentalist evangelicals, that same game runs rampant in fundamentalist and evangelical politicians. So you see, it's like there are certain traits that they share, from the political side of the spectrum to the religious side of the spectrum. They share those traits, okay? They bring those traits with them from the church into government. And I don't have time for that foolishness. I am a strict constitutionalist. Don't tell me you're a patriot and you think it's time to throw our Constitution away and write a new one. Honey, you're not a patriot if that's your thought process. You're anything but a patriot. No, you're no longer a patriot. Now you're what's referred to as a revolutionary, okay? Now you want to engage in revolution. That is not a patriot. A patriot is someone who loves their country as it exists. And I love the United States of America. I love the principles. I love the values. I love the ideals that this nation has always stood for and that it's always represented. I grew up, in school. I'm going to tell you right now, growing up as a kid, right up into my adult life, I couldn't go to a ball game and hear them sing the national anthem without tears coming to my eyes, because I have always been very patriotic. Now, sadly, MAGA has made things so disgusting that when I see somebody flying, we've got a neighbor who has a flagpole with an American flag on it, and immediately, my thoughts are very negative, very, very bad concerning that person. Because the way I see it today, people who carry Bibles and people who fly flags are generally the worst among us, to be honest. And, I just, the minute I see one of those two things, I'm turned off. Here I am, a Christian. Here I am, a preacher of the gospel. And if I read an advertisement for a auto repair shop and they say, we're a Christian company, blah, 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 blah. Guess what, honey? I'm not going there. They're not going to get my business. No way in the world. No way in the world. Because unfortunately, in America, the evangelical and the fundamentalist community has perverted and distorted and corrupted the image of genuine biblical Christianity. And I don't want to be associated with none of them. I have no interest whatsoever. Let me, if I may, share with you a video. I've been saying for weeks now, since I started my podcast, that part of the plan that the GOP and Trump have in place, they want violence to break out in this country, okay? They know what they're doing. When they go in and they do all these mass firings and they do all this mass, destruction, they know what they're doing. They know people are going to get upset. They know people are going to become extremely emotional. And ultimately, they know people are going to wind up in the streets, and there are going to be all kinds of protests and all kinds of public displays of anger and frustration. They know this, folks. They know it's going to happen. And they're counting on it. They need these protests to break out in violence. Therefore, they may very well sow some of their own people, mega people, into the crowds in order to try to get something started. If they can get violence occurring in enough locations around the country during the same time frame, that will give Trump the excuse to do two things. Number one, to bring in the military, to bring in the National Guard, to declare martial law, and to suspend habeas corpus. Now, mind you, it really won't be serious enough that habeas corpus should have to be suspended, but that they don't care about that. You know what they're trying to do. They have a reason for doing this. They want to suspend habeas corpus. What does that mean? That means basically there is no more Constitution. There is no more Bill of Rights, at least for a period of time. Abraham Lincoln had to suspend habeas corpus during the First Civil War in order to be able to effectively fight the Civil War. However, when everything was over, we returned immediately to our constitutional framework. In this instance, they want an excuse to be able to suspend habeas corpus. They want an excuse to be able to declare martial law. They want an excuse to be able to bring in the military against Americans on our own soil. And the minute that happens, I'm telling you right now, watch. The minute that happens, our republic is no more. It's dead. Right now, it's breathing its last few breaths. But the minute that happens, our republic is dead. Because Trump and the GOP have no intention of going back to our constitutional form of government. They have no intention whatsoever. As a matter of fact, I would be surprised. I literally would be surprised if Trump doesn't make some big show of destroying the original documents. I'd be surprised if he doesn't make some big spectacle of burning the original Constitution, destroying it, and saying, we're going to write a new Constitution. We're going to create a government that, works for us today. That was good for then, but we need to write it based on our values, based on what we blah, 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 blah. Just watch. He loves to make a spectacle of every stupid thing he does. But just watch. And of course, so many in the GOP mega base worship this man, and everything he does they go along with. So they're not even going to realize, they're not even going to have a clue of what's happening and what's going on. There are many people right now becoming very angry over the actions that Trump is taking. And they don't understand why their congressmen, why their senators are not standing up to Trump, why they're not opposing him, why in fact they are supporting him. And they are showing up at town halls around the country. They are being extremely vocal. We are getting very close. I'm telling you right now, we are getting closer by the day to violence breaking out. We are getting closer by the day. I watched a couple of videos of some of these Congress people having town halls in their districts, and you could see that they were this close to somebody punching them right in the face or worse. And as Trump continues to reign this reign of destruction upon our government, upon our programs, upon our system, which has taken us decades to build. A lot of folks, maybe you're too young to remember. I remember a time when Social Security, for instance, really gave so little to people, retirees and what have you. It gave them so little that they could, there's no way they could live on that teensy amount of money that they were getting. Originally, Social Security was meant to be to subsidize people in their old age, okay? At one time in the history of our country, it was much more common for people to save than they do today. Nowadays, you can't afford to save. It costs so much to pay your bills that you can't afford to save. So we don't have people today that are saving at the same rates they used to. Social Security was supposed to subsidize understanding that most people, even if they tried to save for retirement and old age, chances are they wouldn't have enough to continue to support themselves. So Social Security was designed as a supplement. However, as the nation grew, as time passed, it became more and more obvious that most retirees were literally having to rely entirely upon their Social Security. And I remember any number of times throughout the course of my 59 years when there were debates in Congress and, they were talking about the need to raise the benefits, to raise the amount of the benefit because people could not live. They could not support themselves. I remember as a kid hearing about elderly people who literally were eating cat food and dog food out of the cans. They were literally eating that, folks, because that's all they could afford. They couldn't afford to go buy meat. They couldn't afford to have groceries like they'd like to have. And I remember the debates. I remember the arguments. I remember all the, hoopla. But these programs have grown and they have developed and they have been fine-tuned over the course of decades. So if Trump and MAGA come in and destroy all this and grind it to powder, it would take decades, honestly, it would take decades to really rebuild and get everything back up and running and get, all of the field offices open and get employees. And can you imagine the cost? Can you imagine what it would cost us today to have to build new buildings or buy new buildings to accommodate these various government offices? Can you imagine what it would cost us today to have to hire people in? Brand new people, we'd have to be paying a whole lot better a salary than we've been paying. And government jobs, as a rule, tend to be pretty good paying jobs. This is what I'm saying. Trump and MAGA are trying to literally reduce our current system of government to dust. That is literally what they're trying to do. Because once they achieve that end, they're going to look the American people right in the eye and say, y'all have no choice at this point but to yield to us. You have no choice. Because if you think for 1 second that you could coup and you could, reestablish what used to be. Now you can't, because we've destroyed everything. We've wiped it all out. The computers have all been wiped out. The programs have all been wiped out. The spreadsheets have all been wiped out. Everything has been done away with. We don't even have a list of people that used to be on Social Security anymore. So everybody that was on disability would have to reapply. Everybody that was retired would have to reapply. You'd have to go back to square one. You'd have to start all over again. Folks, this is what they're trying to do. This is why you see Trump and MAGA rushing through and just wiping things out like a bulldozer. I shared an article with you the other day because I had said I fully expect them to sell off all these federal buildings and all these structures associated with these now defunct programs. And I said that just based on my own thoughts. Then, several days later, I happened to find an article on the internet that said Trump plans to sell off these federal buildings. I said, son of a gun, there it is. I had a feeling that was going to be part of their plan, but here's proof. And I forget who the source was, Huffington Post or something to that effect. But I want to share something with you right now. This is video from YouTube. If you notice, when I share video, I always do a screen record, and I include not just the video itself, but I include underneath it the source, what account had posted this video, so as to give proper credit to the people that actually created the video. I do not claim copyright, I do not claim to own these videos. You can clearly see when I share a video who deserves credit for this video. This video is, I believe, about 10 minutes long. But watch this, listen. Again, use a little bit of common sense, use a little bit of reason. How far away do you think we are from violence breaking out in this country in response to what Trump and MAGA are doing? Take a look at this.
Check. Hi. I'm Jeff. I'm a constituent. I'm from Pine Beach. In March, you told us that you practically broke your arm patting yourself on the back for not voting in January to just eliminate the ACA. You told us that that was because you didn't think that health care could be solved in a couple of months. It's too complicated. It took you 3 weeks. 3 weeks to go from it's too complicated and it can't be done quickly to I've got a huge pile of excrement here that is a horrible mess of a bill that 17% of the population wanted, that the CBO said was going to kick 24 million people off of health insurance. 3 weeks, Congressman. 3 weeks, Tommy boy. That's all it took for you to go from I'm not going to do it that quickly to I've got a yes vote in my pocket and I'm going to use it. They took that vote off the bill because they knew that it wasn't going to pass. I thought, thank God. Thank God. We're not going to have to do that. It took a couple of days, and a couple of more days, and then suddenly we got the MacArthur Amendment. Congratulations. You're in history now. You're in the national spotlight. And that's one thing I want to talk about, the national spotlight. You keep talking about all the constituents that you have to adhere to. And over in this county, they believe one thing, and over in this county, they believe another thing. And you're trying to thread that needle. Well, you haven't threaded it at all. Everyone that is going to be losing from this, you have not addressed. You have not addressed it properly. You have not addressed it fully. You have ignored us. I have called your office incessantly, and I get people who don't know what's going on. I don't get any return phone calls. If I ever fax or email, I get a form letter that informs me about what I contacted you about and why you can't do anything about it because it's still in committee. You look forward to taking my opinions into consideration. You have not taken my opinions into consideration. Too complicated. It's not going to get done in months. 3 weeks. I don't understand.
What's your question?
Oh, we haven't even begun. I'm not done with you yet. I got the mic, and I'm not going anywhere. Turn off the power. I got a very loud voice. This ain't over yet. My wife was diagnosed with cancer when she was 40 years old. She beat it, but every day, she lives with it. She thinks about it. Every pain, every new something going on somewhere, is it coming back? Is this cancer? Do I have it again? Is it going to kill me this time? Is it going to take me away from my children? Speaking of which, my children both have pre-existing conditions from birth. One cardiac, one thyroid. You have been the single greatest threat to my family in the entire world. You are the reason I stay up at night. You are the reason that I can't sleep. What happens if I lose my job? I'm very fortunate, sir. I have a really good job, and I have really good health insurance, and we can all have peace of mind. But now my wife, who every day is wondering if she's going to get cancer, is it happening now? Well, it didn't happen now, but what about now? Now also has to contend with, what if my husband loses his job? If I lose my job, we can't afford COBRA. We can't afford to get private insurance. We get it from my employer. If I lose it, it's gone. If I lose my job on a Monday, if I'm lucky enough to find a job on a Tuesday, which never happens, they will not have insurance ready for me. I will not be eligible for 3 to 6 months. If I lapse my coverage within 63 days, suddenly I'm in a high-risk pool. My pre-existing conditions, which I don't give a shit about, come after me. Come after me, I don't care. But you came after my wife. You came after my kids. I have sympathy for your mother. I have sympathy for your daughter. But you did not learn the lessons they were trying to teach you. Because this is what you did to us. In this district, you do not listen. But your actions affect the entire country. There is no one in this country that your actions are not going to affect. So everyone's voice is important. And when 17% of the population said, don't do it, you did it. This man is correct when he said that you brought it back from death. Ryan said it's dead. Trump said it's dead. And you said, nope, I got a better idea. Last time in Waretown, you told us that you went to Congress to fix problems, that you didn't want to decorate a chair, that you didn't want to choose between being an obstructionist and I want to get something done. That was the keenness of your intellect, that you only had 2 choices in front of you. Don't be an obstructionist or make something better. Well, there was a horrible bill available to you from a horrible group of people who believe that we don't deserve health insurance. They have said it on TV, on camera. Well, then you're not paying attention. And that's your responsibility. They said it. They said that if we get sick, it's our fault. These are the people that are in your party, that you're working with. These are the people that came up with a plan that's going to kill millions of people. The CBO scored it. 24 million people off of health insurance. And they call that choice. Like we're choosing not to have health insurance if we can't afford it. That is insulting. That is detrimental to the mental health of us as a nation. But all of it, totally misses the point. Healthcare is not a good. You do not buy health insurance the same way you buy a car, the same way you buy a house. Those are already complicated things to do. You got to know about cars, you got to know about houses, at least a little bit, but there are reasonable ways to be educated on those things and make reasonable choices. I work in healthcare, sir. It is complicated. The only one that doesn't believe that it's complicated is an orange-haired buffoon sitting in the White House. And you're working with him to take something that he doesn't understand, that he won't be responsible for, because he's going to be fine. You're working with him, you're working with Ryan, you're working with people that don't care about us. That's right. If you want to make something better, you could have made the ACA better directly. You could have made sure that all the funding that you're saying that we need right now, just put it in there. Introduce a bill. Show me what you're made of. Show me that you know what's going on, that you can actually do something instead of siding with people that clearly, by the virtue of their own words, do not care. They want their money back. That's their version of compassion.
If you were bipartisan, you would have been working with the Democrats. Exactly. 30 or 40 people that don't believe in it.
But the point is that healthcare is not like buying anything else. You cannot expect people to be good consumers of healthcare. Another wonderful talking point. Thank God for the GOP for giving us that one. We need to be better consumers of healthcare. You're supposed to be vetting doctors and vetting hospitals and knowing what an MRI costs and knowing what a CT scan costs. And if I need a cardiac catheterization, how much does that cost? And does it cost different if I have this doctor or this doctor? It's completely immoral. And this is the point, Congressman. This is the point. Because health insurance as a for-profit business is immoral. When I am drowning and you insist that I pay before you will save me, that is immoral, sir. Completely. You have no legs to stand on. You want to make money off of me. If you're in insurance, you want money off of me. And the reason that it's not going to go to single payer is not because you don't believe it. It's because you know that the insurance companies have a powerful lobby and they would decimate you. Donald Trump has woken us up. 30, 40 years. And we have been slowly going to sleep. Just watch your reality TV. It's American Idol at 8 o'clock. That's what's important. That's what they want. No more. You came from my wife. I will not forgive. I will not forget. I don't want to hear your response. I'm not interested. I've heard it already. I heard it in Waretown. I've been watching you on TV, and I read the bill that you sponsored. I read the one that you were willing to say yes to. I know exactly what's going on, Congressman. I'm not an idiot. I see it. Everyone here knows what's going on. Everyone in the country knows what's going on. You owe it to everyone. Your fundamental principle is flawed. I don't have any choice with an insurance company. I have no value to an insurance company. I can't do anything to their CEO. I can't do anything to their employees. Nothing. I can argue till I'm blue in the face. But a single payer run by the government, oh yeah, it's got problems, but it's also got elections, and you're going to find that out in 2018. You're done, Tommy boy. That's it. That's it. Go ahead, have your conversation. But I'll tell you another thing. Not you in this room can tell me with 100% certainty that the person in the White House works for us and doesn't have interest in Russia that he isn't answering to. And you, sir, while he's drumming up business to take us into war in North Korea, are using their talking points. The first words you said to us in Waretown, I'm not Donald Trump. Well, I got an orange wig. You may as well put it on. You don't want to decorate a chair? There's one right there. You'll do less damage. Sit on down. You're done.
This is 1 month into the new administration, and you're seeing a month in, Trump and his minions are moving like freight trains through our government. They are destroying programs that have existed for years and years. They are compromising the image of our nation around the world. They are causing America to look like a callous, selfish, self-centered, prideful country that couldn't care less about the poor or the poorer nations that are struggling. Well, of course we don't. We've got the biggest racist in the world in the White House. You think he wants to do anything, pardon the language, but I'm going to say it. You think he wants to do anything for the shithole countries? That's what he labeled them. You think he wants our government contributing a nickel to these poor African countries with a bunch of poverty-stricken blacks? He doesn't even want to give an opportunity to a person of color in America, never mind offer assistance to people of color in other nations around the world that he has labeled poop holes. Folks, it enrages me. It utterly enrages me. You see the anger in this man. You could see how upset he was. And look at the response of the crowd. Look at this is a Republican congressman, folks. He's conducting a town hall. He's talking to his voters from his party. And these people are getting more and more angry by the minute. I've been saying for years that this is going to result in a second civil war. I've been saying for years we are going to have an outbreak of domestic violence like we've never seen before. I believe that the second civil war is going to look very different than the first Civil War, because obviously the first Civil War, there was the line of delineation. There was a specific geographic location, that delineated one side from the other. You had the North and the South. You had the Mason-Dixon line, In this instance, it's going to be based on race. You're not going to know whether your neighbor is a racist nut who wants to kill you because you're black or you're gay. It's going to be the most dangerous time that we've ever seen in this country. I believe it's going to look a lot like the domestic terrorism in Ireland and in the United Kingdom during the era of the Republican, not Republican, I'm sorry, the trying to remember, IRA in Ireland, They were setting off bombs, they were blowing up restaurants, they were blowing up places, I believe that's what we're going to see, folks. I believe we're going to see churches being blown up. I believe we're going to see political offices being blown up. I believe we're going to see assassinations of political leaders. I'm going to tell you something. I've got a feeling it's going to start with Republicans. I have a feeling that the first people to be assassinated are going to wind up being Republicans. And you know who's going to do the assassinating? Their own people. Trump and his propaganda machine will try to claim it's, some leftist Democrat, They've pulled that stunt because every act of violence in recent years toward Trump or any other politician has been committed by someone of their own party. And they've tried to deflect. They've tried to suggest that it was the other side. And then they turn around and they talk about how the other side has tried to kill them. And they're completely twisting and perverting the well-established facts. How far away from violence do you think we are? Look at the anger in that man. Look how upset, and rightfully so. I think if that congressman had gotten too close to him, I honestly believe, I think he'd have clocked him. I think he'd have punched him right in the mouth, because you could see that poor man was doing everything in his power to contain his absolute frustration and anger. Now, I've got one last video I want to show you today. I told you this is coming. Watch what's happening in America. Even now, only 1 month in to Trump's term, so-called.
So, friends, today, Sunday, I spoke at the Principles First Summit in Washington, D.C., and while I was there was a bomb threat. And there was an email that was sent explaining what motivated the bomb threat. The email said, among other things, that some of the speakers at the conference, including myself, quote, deserve to die. Well, guess what, friends? The people who are fighting for the rule of law, for the Constitution, for a healthy American democracy, will not be intimidated. Because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. This is not the video making today. I was invited to speak at the 2025 Principles First Summit in Washington, D.C. What is Principles First? Well, it's an organization made up of conservatives, Republicans, former Republicans, people who now identify as unaffiliated to any political party, even though they are conservative, because they feel like the Republican Party has left them behind. Many of them feel like the Republican Party is dead. And this is an organization that, as its name suggests, believe we have to put principles first regardless of party or ideology. And so when they invited me to come speak to this conservative organization, I jumped at the chance. You may remember not too long ago, I posted a video and a written piece on Substack explaining why I left MSNBC. It was because I felt like I was preaching to the converted, and I wanted to begin to speak with more conservative audiences, go on conservative media outlets if they would have me, to talk about the importance of the rule of law to a healthy democracy, not from a place of politics or ideology. So I happily accepted the invitation to speak at today's Principles First Summit. And while I was there, a bomb threat came in, and there was an email that was sent explaining what the bomb threat was all about. Let's start with the new reporting. This from The Independent. Anti-Trump summit in D.C. evacuates after receiving credible bomb threat. And that article reads in part, a gathering of anti-Trump conservatives in Washington, D.C. was evacuated on Sunday after receiving what officials with the organization called a credible bomb threat. Quote, hotel security, private security, and MPD, the Metropolitan Police Department, have made the decision to evacuate Summit floor so that the area can be secured. We intend to reconvene and continue with the summit once the area has been secured, read the statement from the summit's organizers on Sunday afternoon. And we first learned about the email that was sent explaining the motivation behind the bomb threat when Jim Acosta posted it. Here's what Jim posted. Here is the bomb threat at the Principles First Summit in D.C. I'm told by a source familiar with the situation that this is the threat below. See email attached. It mentions Michael Fanone and his mother, as well as other attendees at the conference. And here's the email that Jim references. To honor the J6 hostages recently released by Emperor Trump, I've constructed 4 pipe bombs out of 1 by 8-inch threaded galvanized pipes, end caps, kitchen timers, some wires, metal clips, and a homemade black powder. I recently placed one in a room I rented at the JW Marriott at 1331 Pennsylvania Avenue, Northwest Washington, D.C., which is where the summit was being held. It is rigged to explode as soon as the door next opens. I also shoved another pipe bomb down the toilet in the bathroom nearby where the principal's first summit is being held. Mark Cuban, Chris Christie, John Bolton, George Conway, J. Michael Ludwig, Adam Kinzinger, Michael Steele, Jeff Duncan, Bill Kristol, Frank Figluzzi, Glenn Kirshner, Stephen Riker, Norm Eisen, and especially Mike Fanone, all deserve to die. In that spirit, the third device has been placed inside Michael Fanone's mother's mailbox, which is rigged to explode when the mailbox opens. Currently, Bolton's home. By the time you've read this email, the final device will have been deposited inside of his mailbox and rigged to explode in the same way. To my family, I simply be done. So friends, I just want to say 2 things about today. First of all, this kind of a bomb threat would typically be investigated jointly by the FBI, ATF, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the Bureau of Alcohol, Firearms, and Explosives. Kash Patel. Who's the head of the ATF? Well, Donald Trump just said he wants Kash Patel to head up the ATF as well. Well, friends, let me tell you, given that I am one of the named targets of this, email alleging that there were bombs placed at today's conference, I will be keeping up on the nature and the progress, the existence of a federal investigation into today's events. And the second thing I want to say, friends, is not only will this not deter us from fighting for the rule of law, fighting for accountability, fighting for justice, it will energize us. It will motivate us. It will inspire us to keep going. We will never stop. Because justice matters.
There you go. Apparently, this person probably was faking their threat, but it shows you the mindset. We are headed towards some violent times. This is why I've been trying to warn people, especially those that are in high-risk groups, to be prepared. Just prepare yourself. In the event, for the sake of your life, you need to get out of Dodge, so to speak. Prepare yourself. Get the information you need. Know what you'll need to do so that if and when the time comes, you're prepared to do what you must. Okay, that's all I've been saying. I've been saying now for years and years that we were headed for a time of violence like we've never seen before. Domestic terrorism, I said years ago, I told our church folks in Dallas, I said, right now we are playing political musical chairs. Each election, we're determining, when the music stops, who's going to sit in the chair and who's going to be eliminated. I said, it is imperative that if violence is going to break out, and it's going to, it's inevitable, then it's really imperative that a person be in the White House when this happens who wants to preserve our democracy, just as Abraham Lincoln wanted to preserve our union. If the person in the White House is someone who is seeking to discard our Constitution and someone who is seeking to remake our nation in the new Nazi image, we're in big trouble. Because when this all begins to happen, he's going to rubber stamp it, he's going to approve of it, he's going to cover these people's tracks, he's going to give them cover, and it's going to be a disaster. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I'll never understand how Joe Biden, with a smile on his face, could welcome Trump to the White House and act like everything was normal. I'll never understand that as long as I live. I will never understand that as long as I live. And that general who wrote President von Hindenburg in Germany after he had appointed Hitler to the chancellorship and told him, history will curse you in your grave for having done this, because this is a huge mistake. Got news for you. I've said it before. I'll say it again. History is going to curse Joe Biden in his grave. Because, like it or not, you can hate this old preacher all you want to. Like it or not, the same ruling that everybody complained about would give Trump, unbridled power and immunity from virtually any action as long as he was committing it in the name of the country. That same ruling would have given Joe Biden cover as well. And Joe Biden could have done any number of things to protect our nation and to keep us from having a Hitler wannabe sitting in the White House. And according to the Supreme Court, the same cover that they claim that everybody griped, would give Trump all this leeway. Well, honey, that same ruling would have given Biden equal leeway. And unfortunately, instead of anything being done to make certain that that never happened, nope, we just acted like everything was normal. Joe just acted like, everything was perfectly normal. Yeah, I'm just handing off power to the next guy. No, you're not. You were handing the keys of the kingdom to Adolf Hitler, and you knew it. He knew exactly. You are not going to tell me for 1 minute that Biden did not have access to all kinds of intelligence and information relative to those organizations and people who are going to be part of Trump's second Civil War, the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers and all these other groups. You're not going to tell me for 1 minute Biden didn't have all kinds of information relative to these things. And honestly, folks, I'm getting to the point where I'm getting rather cynical. I'm getting a little jaded. I'm starting to wonder if they all aren't in on this thing. I'm starting to wonder if, this whole bloody Democrat versus Republican isn't just a big act. Because I'll never, as long as I live, I have been screaming from the rooftop now for a decade almost that Trump being allowed into the White House was the death of our democracy. I said that before he went in the first time. When Biden got elected, I was so thrilled. I was so happy. I said, oh, thank you, Jesus. Maybe God has given us a chance. Maybe the Lord is allowing us an opportunity to avoid this disaster that I saw coming. But no, instead of Trump being hauled, that man should have been hauled into court within a matter of days after Biden entered the White House. The DOJ should have dragged him into court and prosecuted him for trying to overthrow our government within days. And if somebody says, yeah, but, violence would have broken out. Yeah. And we'd have had a man in the White House at the time who was trying to preserve our constitutional republic. If violence is going to break out at all, that's when it should have broken out. And instead of being afraid of the violence and instead of trying to avoid the violence, if there'd been any wisdom in Joe's head, he would have understood. Just like Lincoln. Lincoln knew good and well when he went into the White House. He knew that there was going to be a civil war. He knew it. He had no misgivings whatsoever. He did not for 1 second think that they were somehow going to be able to avoid the Civil War. No, Lincoln knew good and well that the Civil War was going to happen. But the important thing was, if it was going to happen, he needed to be in the White House and not his Southern opponent. The Democrats, honestly, they failed us miserably. They didn't do anything. They did precious little to try to repair the breaches in our walls and to make certain that weaknesses within our Constitution were provided for, and things were stiffened up so that a demagogue could not go into the White House and in short order turn our democracy into a dictatorship. I said it before, I'll say it again, I'll say it till the day I die. It took Hitler 53 days. 53 days. Trump's already been in 1 month. Hitler had a different constitution. The German constitution didn't read the same as the U.S. Constitution. So he may have been working with, different rules and different laws. But according to history, he used every legal means, everything Hitler did to destroy the German government. Everything he did legally. He did it within the system. He literally followed the rules. But he knew where the weaknesses were. He knew where their constitution was compromised. He knew which of those provisions could be used to the detriment of the country as well as to the betterment of the country. It's like us here in the United States, freedom of speech. Well, that's one of our greatest freedoms. It's one of our greatest stated protected liberties. Yes, it is. It's also one of our greatest weaknesses. It serves both purposes. Because as long as people of goodwill are using freedom of speech, all is well with the world. But when you have somebody who is evil and wicked and has some dastardly plan in mind, that same freedom of speech can be to our detriment. That's why Trump and his propaganda machine, Fox, Newsmax, all of these other organizations, that's why they're so easily able to manipulate the Republican base. Why? Because of freedom of speech. There's no way in the world, there's no provision in the Constitution for freedom of speech. However, when speech is being used to plan or devise a plan whereby to overthrow the government and blah, blah, we don't have that. It's that caveat does not exist within our Constitution. And therefore, we can't stop Trump from going on television saying the biggest stinking lies, the biggest falsehoods, the biggest pile of manure that anybody could ever stack up. We can't stop the guy from doing that. No, because wicked men with evil intentions are able to use that same freedom of speech to our detriment. You see what I'm saying about our Constitution having, weak spots that can actually be used against us? And I'm going to tell you, Trump's been testing every single inch of the fence looking for the weak spots. His first term, that's a lot of what he was doing. He was pushing up against the fence, see how much he could get away with, see what he could get away with. And now, and I knew the minute he went in for a second term, I said, at that point, it's going to be gloves off, no more games. They're not even going to hide what they're doing. And I've been saying this for ages. If Trump goes in for a second term, that's it. He's going to seal the death of this republic during the second term, because at that point, he does not owe anyone anything. He's gotten what he wanted. Power, position. And once he's there, he doesn't have to do nothing to satisfy the religious right. He doesn't have to do nothing to satisfy his base. And by golly, he is rushing through doing all kinds of these destroying programs that most of his base rely upon every day of their lives. The man is doing exactly what I said he would do. And he is going to ignore the Constitution. He is going to ignore the decision of the courts. Watch, just watch. Why? Because that, my friend, is another weakness in our Constitution. The only recourse our founding fathers afforded us by reason of our Constitution to remove a bad actor who might happen to get into the White House, the only recourse they gave us was impeachment. Trump was twice impeached during his first term. And what did the Republicans do? They covered for him. They supported him. They made certain that he did not wind up convicted so that he could be removed and barred from ever being able to run again. And you're going to stand there and look at me and seriously tell me that the Republicans have not been complicit in this plan from day one. Really? Really? No. Don't give me this garbage. Well, they were afraid if they went with impeachment that, they wouldn't get reelected and blah, 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 blah. No, that wasn't it. That wasn't it. They were in on the plan from minute one, folks. These guys, Trump is doing exactly what they want him to do. He is doing exactly what the Republican Party has wanted to do. Honey, I'm old enough to remember. I can remember all the way back to Reagan. I remember Reagan wanted to do away with all kinds of departments. He wanted to do away with all kinds of programs. He wanted to do away with all kinds of regulations and rules so that the corporate class could make all kinds of money hand over fist at the expense of the American people and their health and their well-being. And I said it before, I'll say it again. I keep repeating that over and over and over again, but just watch the genocide that is about to occur. You think Hitler's Germany was bad when it came to genocide? Wait until you see the genocide Trump's about to unleash in our nation. He's already started the process, done away with our association with the World Health Organization. He's already shut down the CDC. This guy is going to implement every possible policy. He's going to do away with as much health care as he can. Because according to Hitler, human beings should be no less violent than nature itself. And in nature, in the wild kingdom, as it were, of the animal kingdom, only the strong survive and the weak are devoured. And Hitler said, that's the way we as human beings ought to approach things. Only the strong should survive. And the weak, the sick, the elderly, let them die. Let them die. Their time is done. They're of no use to us as a race. They're no use to us as a people. I drove Uber and had a Republican attorney. He told me he was a Republican, and he told me he was an attorney riding in my car. And this man was talking, and my God, the stuff coming off his lips, all I could think was, I've got a Nazi in my car. I've literally got a Nazi in my car. And I'm not joking. I am not being hyperbolic. I'm not exaggerating. The things this man was saying were literally things that the Nazi Party had said. He sat there and told me, he said, well, you know, I've worked hard my whole life, and I went to school, and I became a lawyer, and I've worked hard, and I've got great benefits, and, you know, if I get sick, I can go to any hospital I want, and blah, 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 blah. And you know, and he's like, and then he turns around and says, and everybody in this country has the same opportunity I had, and if you don't work hard enough, and if people haven't worked hard enough to get somewhere in life so that they've got benefits and they can have health care and blah, 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 he said, well, if they get sick and they're dying, he said, they just need to die. This is what a man told me, folks, in my car driving Uber in Dallas, Texas, while Trump was running for president. Said, they just need to die. Said there, listen, nature's decided that their time is up, and who are we to intervene? Who are we to interfere with nature? Said we need to let the weak die, need to let the sick die. All they are is a drain on society anyway. This is what this man said to me. It took me every ounce of strength I had in my body. I'm not joking. You have no idea. It took everything in me to drive that demonic, evil piece of meat to his destination. Because listening to that garbage coming out of his mouth, I was so tempted. Oh, you have no idea how tempted I was. We were on the highway, and I was ready to pull my car over onto the side of the highway and kick that dirty, filthy creature out of my car. and tell him, you call another Uber. Let them come pick you up because you're not going to ride in my car. It took everything in my power not to do that, because what was coming out of that man's mouth offended me so much. My God, it was so repulsive to me, the things he was saying. As a Christian, everything he was saying was the antithesis to everything I believe as a child of God. We're supposed to love everybody. We're supposed to feed the hungry, house the homeless, help the poor, visit the sick, encourage those in prison. And here this guy's talking this Nazi garbage. But we've got people in our world today who cannot believe. Oh, it can't be possible that Trump is a modern Hitler. That just can't be possible. No, Hitler was such an evil figure. There's no way in the world in the 21st century we could have another Hitler. We can, we did, we do. And I hope to God people in this country wake up. At the very least, folks, we need to be seeing things for what they really are right now. We cannot afford, at this moment in time, you cannot afford to walk around with rose-colored glasses. You cannot afford to try to paint this picture as being better than it is. You cannot walk around half blind right now. It is imperative, my friend, that we all fully, completely understand what is happening. And what is happening is the Fourth Reich is rising from the dust. Hitler's Third Reich went down in flames, but now the Fourth is on the rise. And I can't believe, it seems so surreal to me. I cannot believe this is happening in the United States of America. But like I said, when you look at it objectively, and you think about the freedoms that we enjoy in this country, and you look at the weaknesses in our Constitution, democracy is fragile, folks. That is not a byline. That is a fact. Democracy is fragile. When you have a bunch of ignorant, stupid people voting based on one issue or social issues, when government is not supposed to be there to govern and control our personal conduct and our personal behavior. That's exactly what our founding fathers were trying to prevent. But we've got all these ignorant people on the right, the Republican base, what is now MAGA, and all they want government to do is sweep in and start dictating how people should behave and how people should live and in what manner you are able to pursue happiness. Oh, and by the way, we believe that everybody has to do it the same identical way. If you're not heterosexual, then you're simply not right. There's something wrong with you. You can't pursue happiness as a gay, lesbian person. No, that's not acceptable. And bless God, government should be telling us what's acceptable and what isn't. Drag performance is not acceptable. We can't have that. Idiots. Idiots. Come on, my God. Drag has been part of the entertainment scene going back to antiquity. Some of the most popular performers going back to the 40s and 50s were individuals who did drag characters. Look at Milton Berle. Look at Flip Wilson. These people did drag characters and everybody loved them. They loved it. Drag is something that's been around, my God, going back to the beginning of time practically. There's nothing wrong with it. Who on earth cares? But you've got these foolish people with their self-righteous, asinine ideas of morality and decency. And they're convinced that government should somehow play a role in determining what we can do and what we can't do, what we should do and what we shouldn't do. That is not the role of government. The church is there to help guide people. The church exists in an effort to help people embrace a standard of morality. And I say that meaning every church, every synagogue, every temple, they all have their own views of what is moral and what is not moral, what is right and what isn't right. You know, there are different views. You go to an Episcopal church, they don't believe the same way as a Pentecostal church. You go to a Baptist church, they don't believe exactly the same way as a Methodist church. No, there's variations, you know, but that the church is there to guide people. That is not the role of government. But we have foolish people in this country who want to blur the lines. Folks, we are almost at the end. This is my third hour. I didn't plan on going this late today. I actually was kind of hoping I could do a 90-minute show. But I've been reading lately about how you can grow your broadcast and what have you, your podcast. And one of the things they actually recommend is that you do longer shows. They said be on the air longer because that way you offer opportunity for more people to kind of jump on and hear what you have to say. This podcast, I've told you, is different than many podcasts. I approach things from a different perspective. I hope that something I have said today has educated or has helped you to at least possibly think and use a little bit of reason. Look at things a little more critically, a little more carefully. And don't be too quick to dismiss things. You know, look and see what's happening and ask yourself, why on earth would they be doing this? I don't understand. You know, why on earth would Trump bring in a private American citizen, the richest man in the world, and have him just going through and putting thousands of people out of work, not giving a care about their financial situation, not giving a care about how this is going to hurt their families, not giving a care about whatever struggles they might be going through, instead of them carefully studying these departments and determining how many people they might be able to do without and determining which people, and no carefulness whatsoever. Absolutely no concern whatsoever. They're not trying to achieve the ends they claim they're trying to achieve, folks. The ends they claim they're trying to achieve could be accomplished in a much more humane, much more intelligent, much more careful fashion. Let's be honest. What they're doing is destroying the existing government. That is what they're doing. Reducing it to rubble so that when they, as Hitler declared himself Führer after the death of President von Hindenburg in Germany, so that when Trump declares himself king, you already see the propaganda coming down. The White House official Twitter and truth accounts published a photo of Trump wearing a crown and declaring all long live the king. Come on, people. My God. This isn't a joke. This isn't funny. Let's be reasonable. Let's be intelligent. Let's see what's really happening. This is happening. and we need to be prepared. All right, folks, we are just about at the 8 o'clock hour, so I'm going to go ahead and sign off at this time. I hope that you will come be with us tomorrow. I'm sure I'll have some new stuff to discuss tomorrow, because every day there's some insanity going on. But I hope that you'll come be with us tomorrow. I'll probably get on the air about 5 o'clock again. Like I said, I've kind of come to the conclusion that 5 o'clock is probably a good hour for me to start. So hopefully by 5 o'clock I'll start tomorrow. And we hope to see you then. And be a person of faith. Trust God. That's the only hope we have right now, folks. That the Lord will keep us, protect us, and preserve us in this difficult hour. We need one another. I'm going to say it. You need the church, folks. Right now, you're going to need the church. Very soon, if what I'm anticipating is going to happens, we're not going to have the internet. They're going to shut this down. There's no way they're going to be able to control the population as they hope to control it with the internet working. There's no way. They're going to have to shut this down. They've done that in North Korea. They've done that in other countries when they needed to and wanted to. And I'm here to tell you it's going to happen. And we need to quit this baloney of hiding behind our keyboards and hiding behind our desktops and our laptops and our tablets and our phones. We need to connect with other human beings of like mind. And again, if you wait until you have to be able to do it, it'll be too late. You need to do it now in preparation for what is coming. And that way, if folks have to conduct underground meetings, you'll already be in the loop. And folks will know how to get hold of you. You'll know how to get hold of other folks. And you'll have that connection. But if you don't do it now, you're going to find yourself literally floating by yourself in the ocean without anyone around you. And it's going to be a lonely, depressing struggle. We need one another. We need one another. We need one another. And people of faith, which I'm happy to name myself among them, I want to be surrounded by like-minded people. I want to be surrounded by people that believe God is real, that believe in miracles, that know how to pray. And that way we can weather this storm together. All right, my friend, until we see you again, as I always say, God bless you in Jesus' name.
A voice of reason in turbulent times with Pastor Charles Burnett-Morrow, speaking truth at a time